So the first two episodes of The Acolyte are here, and oh man, has this show received a lot of hate. And whilst I think some of that hate is definitely justified, I don't think the episodes themselves were as bad as some people are making them out to be. They're definitely not perfect, and some of the writing is pretty stupid, but I still found it to be an enjoyable watch overall. From a visual perspective, the show looks amazing. The Acolyte is reported as having the biggest budget of any Star Wars show, and you can definitely see why. The sets and the CGI for the most part are movie quality, and I know that it's a very minor thing, but I also really love to look at the film grain. I think it's a very visually pleasing show to watch, and I was also really glad to see that they finally fixed the lightsabers so they actually look like lightsabers for a change, instead of just looking like props which the Disney shows have heavily suffered from in the past. But at the same time, what the hell have they done to the hilts? Look how massive these things are in comparison to what they're supposed to be. I don't think it's a coincidence that they look eerily similar in size to the replicas that Disney sell, which are comically larger than their on-screen counterparts. I never understood why they can't seem to make them the right size, given that their competitors have been able to do them correctly for over a decade now, and the conspiracy theorist in me thinks they made these hilts in the Acolyte so big so that Disney could actually sell accurate replicas for a change. And if that's true, it's very concerning to me that they would actively damage Star Wars lore just because of their own incompetence to build accurate replicas. As far as the acting in the show is concerned, I thought it was really good. I don't think anyone did a bad job, and some of them had to work with some really bad dialogue, so they did a really good job to still give convincing performances despite having that handicap. Amandla Stenberg as May and Osha and Lee Jung-jae as Sol in particular really stood out to me, and they definitely steal the show. I think the overarching story and the basis for the show is a pretty good one, though I think it's quite clear with the direction the story is going in that it's eventually going to be revealed that the Jedi are actually to blame for Osha and May's family's deaths, and I think the idea is for us to eventually question if the Jedi are actually the good guys, which has the potential to be really bad. So Disney are playing a dangerous game if that does turn out to be the case, but we'll have to wait and judge that when and if it happens. So for now, here are my thoughts on the first two episodes. The first episode begins with a new version of the opening crawl, and this one had a pretty cool 70s vibe to it. But as much as I quite like this new trend of adding their own spin to the opening crawl instead of just completely ignoring it, I also kind of don't like that they're doing this. It just feels to me like if you're gonna do a crawl, then just do the crawl. Otherwise it just kind of stands out and it kind of forces you to think, oh yeah, this is Star Wars, but it's not that Star Wars, you know? In the opening scene, I thought it was quite weird that May has to bribe the alien to find out where the Jedi is, because it's not like it's post Order 66 and the Jedi are in hiding or there's loads of people trying to kill them. I mean, killing Jedi is so rare at this point in the timeline that it's exactly what this show has based its entire premise around. I feel like asking someone where a Jedi is should be like asking someone today where a policeman is. You don't need to bribe someone for that information, and how would that alien even know where the Jedi is anyway? Does she spend all of her time in that pub or something? But anyway, May finds Indara getting drunk as she always does apparently, and she does some really stupid karate pose before asking her to fight, which Indara refuses to do because she says the Jedi don't fight unarmed people, and then May says that they do, so I think this is probably a bit of foreshadowing for the idea that the Jedi were the cause of her family's death, or at least that that's what May believes is what happened, because as we later find out, both her and Osha seem to have different memories of what happened, so who knows at this point what the truth really is. The fight scene itself between Indara and May was pretty good. It's definitely better choreography than what we've previously had from these shows, but what I don't like is that May kills Indara, which is really unexpected because she's played by Carrie-Anne Moss, and I don't get why they'd hire her just for 10 minutes of screen time. I assume she'll be coming back for flashbacks, but in general I think this is a strange move, because at this point in the story we know absolutely nothing about her character, so her death just has no impact on us at all, and maybe that's the intention, which it kind of seems like it might be, given that the same thing happens in the second episode with Master Torbin, so maybe we are just really not supposed to care about these characters at all. But because they've casted such a well-known actress for Indara, it just feels like she is supposed to be a big character, so not having any background to her before being killed just feels really off. I liked the reintroduction of the Trade Federation, though I thought it was unnecessary for them to mimic the mouth movements from the prequels. You see, in The Phantom Menace, their mouth movements don't match what they're saying, and that only happened because of the limitations of practical effects, and you accept it for that reason. But seeing it happen with the CGI characters is just really jarring, and it took me out of the immersion. I also liked the introduction to Osha and the fact that she has a job that we haven't really seen before, but that bit where she freaks out because the fire reminds her of whatever happened to her family family is really out of place, because from the audience's perspective, we don't have a point of reference to connect that to, because not only have we not been shown those events, but there hasn't even been a reference made to them at this point in the story. So the emotion that the show wants us to have just isn't there, and this makes this scene lose nearly all of the impact that it intends to portray. And also, she's had this job for 6 years. Are you really telling me that she's never seen a fire before? Come on. And I really don't understand this whole issue with the fire in space thing, because this is Star Wars, where it's been a thing in this franchise since forever. But anyway, the Jedi arrive in a funky looking starfighter and they question Osha before arresting her, and they send her to Coruscant on a prison ship ran by droids. But where did this ship even come from? There wasn't any sign of it when the starfighter came, and the Nemoidians don't even mention it. And we then introduce Sol on Coruscant, who's teaching younglings in the Jedi Temple, and he gets them to do this meditation exercise and asks them to tell him what they see in their minds. You get some generic answers like balance and life, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, because how can you visualize balance? Is she picturing someone walking on a tightrope or something? And then this one kid says fire, which at least does make sense, but this freaks out Sol, and I think most of us assume that it freaked him out because it's typically associated with the dark side, but I think it's actually because it's hinting at the guilt that he feels for what really happened to Osha's family, and that's why he just continues like normal afterwards and says that fire is acceptable, because it is. It's just that it reminds him of what he did. But again, similar to Osha and her fire, are you really telling me that in all of the years since this incident that he hasn't been reminded of fire once? Come on. So we then get one of those really cliche moments where someone comes in and interrupts the lesson, and then the teacher's like, but that's a lesson for another day, as though a 30-second meditation is a perfectly normal full lesson plan, and you can't just say, bear with me kids, I'll be back in 5 minutes. I mean, look at this kid, even she's surprised that it's already over. So the prison ship gets taken over by the prisoners because somehow this guy's able to wirelessly hack the pilot droids. Okay then, though I do quite like how this guy takes out that patrol droid. But then when the ship crashes, I did find it a bit silly how, considering this ship literally falls from space, it takes incredibly little damage when it lands. And there's a scene back on Coruscant where we're introduced to Jeki, and she confronts Sol about keeping holograms of Osha, which shows sentimentality which can lead to the dark side, but then Sol says it's okay because their memories are lessons, and if they don't meditate on the past, they're doomed to repeat it. Now, considering that that's very conflicting with Jedi methodology, I think this scene is trying to tell us that Sol's a bit like Qui-Gon in that he disagrees with some of the methods the Jedi follow, and he probably feels like the Jedi could do with a bit of a reform. So Osha ends up having a Force dream which confirms to her that May is indeed alive and is the one who's killing the Jedi. And this suggests that May herself is visiting her in this dream, but then later in the second episode, May is shocked that Osha is alive, so that doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's again hinted that the Jedi are actually the ones who killed Osha's family, because when Sol tells Jeki and Yord that she's a twin, they say they had no idea and that it's not in the archives. And this unsettles Sol, which implies that there's a big cover-up, and it's then suggested that May is the one doing the killing, but Sol says that's impossible because he saw May die. The Jedi then manage to locate Osha, who is now standing on the edge of a cliff, and as they tell her to stop, she gets really scared and moves even closer to the edge. And this is really weird because it completely contradicts what she told the prisoners on the prison ship, where she said to them that she doesn't want to escape because she believes in the Jedi and trusts them. But now all of a sudden she's so scared of them that she literally falls off a cliff instead of going with them, let alone the fact that she knows and is friends with at least 2 of these guys. It just makes no sense. So she falls, but Sol saves her, and then she tells him that May's alive, and he believes her despite having no evidence and literally saying just a few scenes ago that he saw her die, and he doesn't even question it. So either he already knew that May isn't dead, or he's the most gullible person in the galaxy. And the final scene in this episode is pretty strange. It cuts to May on a random planet, and whoever her master is going on a rant about the Jedi, and the whole scene just comes across really fan-filmy, and he says that an acolyte kills without a weapon, but she's literally been fighting and killing this whole time with those little throwing knives, so what's that about? So the second episode starts with May breaking into a Jedi temple, and she does this by getting a kid to distract the door guard, and then she throws a hacking ball onto it, so I guess that's a thing now. But later on in the scene, she escapes through an open window on the roof, so why didn't she just break in through that open window to begin with? It turns out that she broke into the temple so that she can kill Master Torbin, who's put himself into a permanent meditation because he's ashamed of what he and the other Jedi did to May and her family. She tries to attack him, but she can't because he's got an impenetrable force field, and as the guards realize there's a break-in, she ends up fleeing through the aforementioned window, which is very convenient. Yord's worried about Osha not being in handcuffs because he still believes that she's the one who's done the killings, because he doesn't believe that May would be able to kill Jedi without training, but this conveniently forgets the fact that he he also said in the first episode that he doesn't believe that Osha is capable of doing it either, because he literally says that it doesn't matter what he believes. So what changed? Soul, to be fair, does call him out on this, as he says that Osha hasn't trained for 6 years, which Yord doesn't really have an answer for, and then he suggests that they could be working together. But I also find it really weird how he refers to her as the prisoner, when in the first episode they made a really big point of showing us that they were friends, and he's quite friendly towards her. So why did they bother with this backstory between the two of them if he's now just going to be completely cold towards her? There's more foreshadowing of the Jedi being revealed to be the bad guys in this show, as when May is talking to her friend who overtook that shop somehow, he says the Jedi justify their galactic dominance in the name of peace, and that peace is a lie. In the next scene, it does seem as though Soul might not have actually done anything wrong, because he talks to Osha about what happened and she says they both saw May die, to which Soul then says he wanted to save both of them, and Osha said that what happened was not his fault. So it seems as though maybe the other Jedi were to blame but not Soul, at least as far as Osha's concerned, because clearly May experienced something very different. May's able to get Torben to come down from his meditation, and she convinces him to kill himself by drinking poison, and just before this he says that he was waiting for her and that the Jedi thought they were doing the right thing. So yeah, the Jedi definitely did something bad. But while this is happening, Soul and the other Jedi are on their way to see Torben, and Osha for some reason decides to separate from the group because she sees another vision of a young May. This girl is literally suspected of killing these Jedi, and she's finally got people back on her side. So she then decides that the best thing to do is to do something suspicious, which could so easily get people doubting her again. And then somehow the route she takes gets her to Torben quicker than the others, even though they're being guided by people who know the temple inside out. Why wouldn't they go this route if it's so much quicker? So Osha sees a dead Torben on the ground, and instead of thinking she should get out of there before someone sees her alone with him, she just stays there and even contaminates the evidence by picking up the bottle and even closes Torben's eyes. It's just so stupid. And of course she gets caught and they rightly assume that she had something to do with it, but then Yord comes out saying that she didn't do it because he followed her and said that Torben was dead when she got there. But how was he even able to see what was going on when he's quite clearly not shown peering out of the only vantage point that he could have seen anything from? If he was watching her from that doorway, we would have seen at least a flicker of his robes or something in the background of all of these shots, but we don't. There's no way that he saw anything that happened, and if he was watching the whole time, why didn't he come out the second that she was confronted? So they figure out where May got the poison from, and they decide to have Osha infiltrate the shop pretending to be May so they can get the guy to give a confession as well as her location. They give Osha a gun, how uncivilized, which Yord isn't happy about, but Soul then tells him that she knows how to use it because she used to be a Jedi. Gee, that could have fooled me. I mean, just look at this incredible accuracy. So it goes well and the guy confesses to supplying May with the poison, and they find out from him that May will be back later that night. So Soul ends up confronting her and she starts fighting him, and I thought this fight scene was pretty cool. I really liked how easy Soul made it look, in particular this little move where he looks away after blocking one of her punches, and I know it's actually really stupid because looking away doesn't help him at all, but come on, it just looks damn cool. Soul takes her throwing knives away and gives her a bit of a taunt saying that she doesn't know how to fight, and he asks again who her master is, but she just keeps on fighting him. And then he does this really cool move where he flips her over and catches her in midair with the force, and he reads her mind at the same time, and it's just really awesome. It's revealed that May doesn't even know who her master is, and this is where we then find out that May thinks Osha is dead, which I have to say I thought it was really compelling how they both have such different memories of the same event, and each one thought that the other died and then went on such different paths. So when she's told that Osha isn't dead, she tries to run away, which the Jedi stop her from doing, and then they corner her and try to arrest her, but she force pushes the ground, which creates a mini sandstorm, and she gets away, even though Jekki's in a ship and she should really be able to track her, but whatever. This is then where Osha confronts May, and she should easily be able to bring her in with the stun gun given how proficient they made her out to be with it, but then she wildly misses twice and May gets away, so that was good. And so after this they know where May's going next because they know who the targets are, which is Soul and the Wookiee Jedi, but Soul isn't allowed to action that because the council decide they need to have a meeting beforehand. And in the next scene, May tries to kill the shopkeeper guy for betraying her, but I find it really funny how she can't stab this normal guy despite being force sensitive and on a crusade to kill multiple Jedi without weapons. The fact that she's able to kill any of them but not him isn't the best of looks for these Jedi. And in the final scene, I thought the Jedi Wookiee looked pretty cool. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the next episode, but it's interesting how they seem to have these Marvel-esque post-credit scenes, but instead they're putting them at the end of the episodes themselves. So yeah, I know after all of that it sounds like I didn't like The Acolyte, but I did actually enjoy watching it. I think the overall story is pretty good, and I find parts of it to be fairly compelling. I think a big reason for that is the acting. I am quite drawn to Seol and Osha/Mei, and that's largely because of the performances from the actors. I totally understand why some people don't like The Acolyte for the show that it is, because as we've just been over, there are a lot of things wrong with it, but I do think some of the hate that it's being given is premeditated from the really bad press that it had before its release, and I completely understand that too, because a lot of the things said by some of the actors and the directors have really pissed me off, to the point that I went into this show really expecting to hate it, so I had to really try hard to separate my own views on that from the show itself to give it as fair a chance as I could, and like I say, I thought it was alright, but that's just me. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this thing that I'm doing. I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.